of the Mountain Man, Chapter 9. When Slaughter got back to his hideout in the hole in the wall, he called all of his men together. Boys, we may be facing a little trouble. Seems Monty Carson has gotten some other men to ride with him, and he's on his way out here. Johnny Turplow, who called himself the Durango Kid, leaned over and spat on the ground. He was a young man barely out of his teens and dressed in what he thought a soon-to-be famous gun hawk should wear. Black pants and shirt with a vest festooned with silver conchos and the hat slung low over his head. He wore a brace of pearl-handled Colt .45 peacemakers on his hips and highly polished black boots that rose to his knees. That mean he ain't gonna give us the money, boss? Slaughter's lips curled in a nasty smile. Oh, he'll give us the money all right, or he'll be getting pieces of his wife in the mail for months to come. He hesitated. I don't rightly know if he plans on putting up a fight or if he's just bringing some extra guns to make sure we keep our end of the bargain. In any case, until we find out just what his intentions are, I want 2 men at each sentry post around the clock. One to keep anybody who tries to get in here pinned down, and the other to ride here to let us know we got company. The Durango Kid looked around at the others, then asked, "Any idea who he's got riding with him?" Slaughter hesitated. Max said it was Smoke Jensen. Jensen? The kid asked. I thought he was dead. Evidently not, according to Max, Slaughter said. Any others? The kid asked. Slaughter shrugged. Don't have any idea, but if the thought of going up against Jensen worries you, kid, you're welcome to ride out of here any time. The kid leaned over and spat again, a smirk on his face. Not likely, Mr. Slaughter. I reckon my share of 50,000 is worth killing a couple of old men past their prime. Slaughter didn't bother telling the kid that if he went up against Monty Carson alone, Carson would in all probability plant him 6 feet under without getting his hair mussed. Good. Whitey will make out a new schedule for standing watch. I figure it'll be a couple of weeks before we see anybody, but it won't hurt to keep a sharp lookout just the same. Smoke and his men were making good time toward Jackson Hole, Wyoming. The weather had been unusually mild for this time of year, and they only had to contend with a few short-lived snowstorms. They made their final camp when Smoke figured they were less than a day's ride from Jackson Hole. As they sat around the campfire, eating the last of the rations as Sally had packed for the trip, Lewis put down his empty plate. I'll tell you something, Smoke. If Sally ever feels the need to leave you for someone who will really appreciate her, she's welcome to come to my place and cook for me any time. Smoke grinned. I bet you won't say that in front of Andre, he said, referring to the French chef who'd been preparing meals for Lewis for as long as Smoke could remember. Lewis shook his head. Don't even think such a thing, my friend. Andre would gut me like a fish if he even thought I was contemplating letting anyone else cook for me. Pearlie grunted. Hell, if Miss Sally ever left the sugar log, Smoke wouldn't have any hands left to tend the stock. They'd all be following her to wherever she was going. Most of them would travel 10 miles just for one of her bare sign. Cal laughed. They'd have to leave awful early to beat you to them, or there wouldn't be any left for them to eat. Smoke held up his hands to quiet the banter. All right, men. We need to form a plan of action for when we get to Jackson Hole. Slaughter will have gotten my message by now, and if he's as smart as Monty says he is, then he's going to have men in town watching for us to arrive. You can bet on that, Smoke, Monty said. Slaughter hasn't survived this long by not watching his back. I would suggest that we split up on the outskirts of town. Lewis said as he pulled a long black cheroot from his coat pocket and lit it off a burning twig from the fire. He tilted smoke from his nostrils and continued. Slaughter will be waiting for Monty and an unknown number of men to arrive together. If we go in by ones and twos, his men won't know we're associated with Monty. Smoke nodded. Good idea, Lewis. I propose that Monty camp just outside town while Curl and Pearlie circle around and go in from the west. Lewis from the north and I'll enter from the south. With any luck, there won't be anyone there who will know who I am. That should give us time to locate this muskrat Calhoun Beartooth told us about and see if he's going to be willing to help us find a way back into the hole in the wall. Wait a minute, Smoke. I ain't gonna sit out here cooling my heels while you fellas do all the work, Monty said. Lewis pointed his cigar at Monty as if it were a gun. You don't have any choice, Monty. Slaughter's sure to have given your description to his men. If they see you in town, they'll know Smoke whoever else has offered to ride with you is there too. Smoke leaned toward Monty. It's the only chance we have of getting close enough to free Mary without Slaughter getting wind of our presence, Monty. Hell, I know you're right, Smoke. It just sticks in my craw having you fellas take risks for Mary and me. That's what friends are for, Pearlie said from across the fire. We all knew what we were getting into when we offered to help you out, Monty. Hell, you've done the same for any one of us. Monty nodded, accepting the wisdom of the plans Smoke laid out. All right, I'll set up a camp, and when you locate this muskrat Calhoun, you can bring him there. Pearlie stood up and dusted off the seat of his pants. Where are you going, Pearlie? Cal asked. To see if there's any of that apple pie left Miss Sally made, he said. Lewis stared at him in wonder. Smoke, if you ever run short of money, you can hire Pearlie out to the circus. He could be billed as the man with the bottomless stomach. Cal and Pearlie slowed their mounts to a walk as they entered the town of Jackson Hole. The light covering of snow on the ground from the last snowfall did little to make the town look any more inviting. The buildings were mostly made of the ponderosa pine logs that were so plentiful on the surrounding mountain slopes, and the streets were dirt and mud, with only a few boardwalks on the main street. Every other building seemed to be a saloon or gambling parlor, though there were several rather seedy boarding houses and hotels for the mostly transient population. Jiminy, Cal said, his eyes wide as he glanced from side to side, noticing the hard-looking men who lounged along the streets, most with bottles of whiskey in their hands, even though it was barely past breakfast time. I can sure see why they call this area Robber's Roost. Pearlie nodded as he let his hand drip to his hip as he loosened the hammer caught on his thong on his coat. Yup, about the only citizens around here that don't make their living with a gun are the barkeeps and fallen doves in the whorehouses. As he spoke, a girl who looked to be no more than 15 stumbled out of a doorway and grabbed a cowboy leaning against the wall by the shoulder. She wore a tawdry dress made of red silk with green overlay that was cut almost down to her navel. After a few moments talking to the gent, he grinned and followed her back through the doorway. Cal shook his head. Not much like Big Rock, is it, Pearlie? Not enough so you can tell it, Cal. He swiveled his head, glancing to both sides of the street. You figure there's any place we can rustle up some breakfast around here? Cal pursed his lips. After a moment, he pointed to the right side of the street. There's a sign over that boarding house saying Good Eats. I reckon that's as good a place as any to look. We gotta find us a place to bed down anyway. They ran in before the building with the sign that read, Aunt Bee's Boarding House, clean sheets and good eats. When they entered, they saw an entrance to the dining area off to the left. Pearlie removed his hat and made a beeline for the room, holding his nose in the air. I smell bacon frying and eggs cooking, cowboy. Looks like we struck pay dirt. Cal just shook his head and followed his partner's nose. Pearlie was like a bloodhound when it came to food, and could smell out victuals as well as a hound could track a rabbit. They sat at a table near the window, where they could watch the comings and goings along the main street and put their hats on a chair. After a moment, a Rotown woman wearing a flour-stained apron approached the table. "Howdy, boys, what can I get you?" she asked. She had gray hair done up in a bun and a face full of wrinkles, showing she spent considerable time in the sun. Her eyes were sky blue and seemed to twinkle with good nature. Pearlie considered her question for a minute, then said, "I like 4 hens' eggs scrambled, a pound of bacon, not too crisp, and some flapjacks with syrup, and about a gallon of coffee," he added. "Are you Aunt Bee?" Cal asked. "That's what most folks call me, sonny boy. Leastways round here. I'll have a couple of eggs and some bacon and flapjacks too," Cal said. Aunt Bee's eyes narrowed as she studied Cal and Pearlie. "You boys don't exactly look like the usual sort we get around here. You just passing through?" Cal and Pearlie glanced at each other. They hadn't had a chance yet to get their story straight about why they were in Jackson Hole. Finally, Pearlie answered her. "Yes, ma'am. We're just up from Texas way. Had a little trouble, crossed the border with the Mexican Federals, and we figured it'd be better for our health if we mosey on up north for a spell." The light seemed to go out of her eyes. "Oh, outlaws, huh?" Cal, noticing her disappointment, quickly said, "Oh, no, ma'am. Leastways not here in the States. It's just that the Rangers tend to take a dislike to anybody that causes trouble with the Mexican authorities. So we thought we'd leave Texas until they forgot about our little problems." Aunt Bee nodded. "Well, hope you don't plan on staying here too long, boys. Jackson Hole ain't exactly a healthy place to hang around unless you're tougher than boot leather. Some of the men round here like to eat young fellows like you for breakfast, if you know what I mean." "Yes, ma'am," Cal said, putting on his most innocent expression. Aunt Bee dusted her hands on her apron, causing a cloud of flour dust to rise in the air. "Well, I'll be seeing to your food, and I'll have the boy bring you your coffee right out." After she left, Cal leaned across the table. "Why'd you tell her we was running from the law?" Pearlie shrugged. "We got to fit in, cowboy. You can't just come to a place full of footpads, thieves, and rustlers and pretend to be choir boys. It wouldn't look right." Cal leaned back. "I guess you're right, though I hate making her think we ride the Owl Hoop Trail." Pearlie glanced at the kitchen door through while Bee had disappeared. "Unless I missed my guess, that lady likes to gossip, Cal, and it won't hurt nothing to have her spread the word we're on the run." While Pearlie was talking, Cal looked out the window and saw Louis Longmont dismounting in front of the boarding house. Cal nudged Pearlie's shoulder and motioned at the window with his head. Pearlie grinned and nodded, evidently glad to see a friendly face among the hard cases on the street. Louis sauntered into the dining room. Gave Cal and Pearlie a quick glance, but didn't acknowledge them in any other way. He sat at a table across the room and leaned back in his chair, pulling out his trademark long black cheroot and lighting it. Aunt Bee brought them a large coffee pot and 2 mugs, said their food would be ready shortly, then walked over to Louis's table. "Howdy, mister," they heard her say. "I'm Aunt Bee. You want breakfast or lunch?" "I believe I'll have lunch, Aunt Bee. How about a steak, cooked just long enough to keep it on the plate, some fried potatoes, and some tinned peaches if you have any?" Bee nodded. "Coffee?" "Yes, please." "Ah, a man with manners. Quite a rarity around here," she said as she walked back toward the kitchen. A few minutes later, a boy that looked to be no more than 12 or 14 came out of the back room with two large platters in his arms. Excuse the noise. He placed the plates in front of Cal and Pearlie and walked back to the kitchen. Pearlie wasted no time. He put his head down and began to eat as if he was starving. Cal glanced over at Louis, smiled, and also began to eat. Just as Louis was being served, several groups of men entered, and the tables in the dining room began to fill up, it being close to the noon hour. Minutes later, Smoke walked in and took a plate by himself, sitting as was his custom with his back to a wall, where he could keep watch on the entrance to the room. Soon all the tables in the room were filled. Pearlie finally finished with his food, poured himself another cup of coffee, and leaned back in his chair, building himself a cigarette. Aunt Bee must do all right from the looks of the crowd, he said, handing Cal his fixing so he could make himself a cigarette also. Just as Cal was lighting his cigarette, four men walked up to their table. The first one, a tall, skinny man with several days, throwing whiskers on his face, a tied down,
Don't feed them until 3:30, 4 o'clock, okay?
tied down coat on one hip, and a large bowie knife, sorry about that, and a scabbard on the other leaned over and put both his hands on their table. If you gents are through eating, why don't you get your asses away from my table and let me and my friends sit down? Pearlie glanced up at him through the smoke from the butt in the corner of his mouth, a mannerism he copied from his idol Joey Wells. Take it easy, partner, he drawled, making no move to get up. We'll leave when we're good and ready and not a minute sooner. You gonna let a pup like that sass you, Billy? The man behind him said with a chuckle. Billy backed away from the table and squared off, letting his hand dangle near the butt of his pistol. Hell no, I'm not, he growled. Now you youngins can either get up off your own accord or I'm gonna have to make you. The three men with Billy spread out next to him, grim expressions on their faces. Hold on there, Billy Baxter, Aunt Bee called from the kitchen door. She was holding a long barrel Greener shotgun cradle in her arms. I don't want no trouble in my place. You hear me, you hooligan? Before Billy could answer, Pearlie got to his feet. Don't you worry none, Aunt Bee, he said, his eyes never leaving Baxter. This cowbroom sounds like all talk to me, and even if he does have the guts to go for that smoke wagon on his head, he won't even clear leather before I put his lights out. Cal got to his feet and unhooked the leather hammer thong on his coat. 4-2, Pearlie. Looks even enough for me. He whispered in a gravelly voice, his eyes on the men behind Baxter. Louis, concerned about the turn of events, cut his eyes over to Smoke, who was sitting smiling and watching. Smoke winked at Louis, indicating he shouldn't worry. Nevertheless, Louis leaned back and straightened out his right leg, resting his hand next to his pistol just in case. Baxter's eyes shifted from Pearlie to Cal, seeing no backup in either man. Sweat popped out on his forehead, though the room was cool. He could suddenly dry lips, unsure what his next move should be. The man next to him moved a little, evidently trying to get out of the line of fire. Suddenly, Baxter's hand grabbed for his gun butt. Before he could get his pistol halfway out of his holster, Pearlie had drawn and slammed the barrel of his Colt on top of Baxter's head, paralyzing him and dropping him to the floor. Only a shade slower, both Cal's pistols were out with hammers cocked and pointed at the remaining men, who were standing there with mouths open and eyes wide. Jesus God Almighty, one of them croaked, holding his hands out away from his pistol. That boy is faster than a snake. Pearlie slowly turned to the other men. You gents better drag your friend out of here, for he bleeds all over Aunt Bee's floor. Aunt Bee rushed over to stare down at Baxter. She looked up. Damn right. Drag his sorry ass out of here and don't none of you bother and try to eat here again. You hear me? Pearlie picked up his hat and gave a slight bow to bowed to Aunt B. Sorry for the trouble, ma'am. I hope I didn't make too much of a mess. She smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. A little blood on the floor is better than hair on the wall, Sonny. It's not the first and it won't be the last blood split in this town either. Any chance of us getting a room for the night, ma'am? Cal asked, hoisting his pistol as Baxter's friends picked him up and carried him from the room. Sure, boys. We're welcome trains to have guests who don't shoot off their guns first chance they get. Come on over to the front and I'll give you a key. Like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Bye.